What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the Slipstream. I'm Ash.
I'm Trey.
I'm Sasha.
And today we're buckling up for the São Paulo Grand Prix in Brazil. So for our first F1 event of the month in November, we break down the circuit. And I just want to mention that a typical F1 event in Brazil has so much more to offer, from the on-track action and the off-track to the fan base. So expect this episode to be a little longer than usual. And so it may just be the understatement of the year when it comes to the venue. And speaking of which, Trey, the rundown on São Paulo.
All right, bet. So, Autodromo José Carlos Passi is located in the outskirts of urban São Paulo and is a 15-turn, 1 minute and 10-second lap circuit that is counterclockwise from one of the few counterclockwise circuits. And it has raced in F1 since 1972 and has seen the most wins come from four-time World Drivers' Champion and Frenchman Alain Prost. 6 of 53 race events have been won by him.
And it's also known for the steep downhill terrain that's going to be the Senna S chicane. And it's also dangerously enclosed by these concrete walls that are just running parallel to the track. And also the home hero, Gabriel Bortoleto, fell victim to the sprint race, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a light crash whatsoever. The footage is devastating. It's really scary to see, actually.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But before we go over that, we need to go over the free practice and sprint qualifying events because, some interesting turnouts there. So there was only one free practice given that there was a sprint race this weekend, and it saw a not so surprising performance by McLaren, getting first and second place with Norris and Piastri, but a very, very promising showing from the Sauber team, which it honestly turned out to be a big nothing burger because Hulkenberg was P3, obviously it was pretty crummy the whole race, and then Bortoleto P5, and the rest is history, which we will talk about.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, though a big shocker with all of this is that once the dominant Max Verstappen and Hamilton duo came up in P17 and P19 respectively, which was quite shocking for me, especially as a big Verstappen fan, given that he's had a great streak up to this point. But regardless, their teammates in the last back two spots of the grid.
And it's quite surprising, actually, because Verstappen and Hamilton really dominate this track usually, but I don't know what happened at this one.
Yeah, so going into the sprint qualifying session, you had Colapinto and Tsunoda out in Q1 as per usual, so nothing really changes there. But Hamilton, who had already struggled in the first session of qualifying, mind you, P17, and is a citizen of Brazil as of 2 years, found himself in P11 and out in Q2 yet again. Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this brings Hamilton's total of Q2 exits, or non-Q3 appearances, into like the double digits just this season. Am I right?
I think so, very much. And out of 24 races, that's quite a high number. And he's out due to a spin at turn 11, but this gave Hulkenberg a free pass to get into Q3. And so speaking of which, we have to get into Mercedes and their surprise show of this season.
Yes, we do. I am so proud of my boys in the Silver Arrows. So Antonelli showed up by starting in the front row behind Lando Norris, and he was less than a tenth of a second behind pole position. So it could have been a second pole position in a sprint race for the young 18-year-old hotshot. And it is
19 now.
19 now. Thank you for that. And it showed audiences everywhere why he is truly the best prospect that the Silver Arrows have had in recent years, because even though, scratch his entire European stint, he shows up whenever he can, and he shows up like a monster, like a beast.
I definitely agree. Antonelli is one of my favorite rookies. I love Hadjar and I love Antonelli. And Antonelli, apart from that, the two pole positions that were great performances altogether, and apart from the little European stint there, he is a very consistent performer, I feel, as well as George Russell. And having these consistent competitors in this race, especially for Mercedes, is quite a strategical move on Toto Wolff's part.
Indeed. So now let's quickly brush on Piastri, Hamilton, Behrman, Colapinto, and Hulkenberg, because we really need to address the Bortoleto situation and how miraculous such an affair was. Ashtray, what's the gist of these five drivers? What happened?
So Hamilton got a flyer of a start and gained 3 positions by the end of the first chicane. And so ultimately, he was the big winner in this scenario and managed to snatch a P7. And with 2 points in the World Drivers' Championship out of that.
But let's also not forget Piastri, who slewed into the wall before the Renato Oposta main straight, taking himself out of a race for the second time this season after Azerbaijan earlier on in September.
And as a championship contender, you cannot have mistakes like that.
Oh, no, it's like...
A DNF is just out of the cards for championship contenders, Max Verstappen, Piastri, and Lando.
Did he get hit in the head after Monza?
Something like that. After summer session, he's just clocked out.
Yeah, so, and Colapinto, I believe, Colapinto and Hulkenberg, who also found themselves crashing in the same exact spot.
Corner of the same lap, in fact. And that wasn't nearly as scary as Bortoletto's crash, can you break that down for us?
Yeah, so it's at the beginning of the final lap in which Bortoletto tried to dive bomb Hadjar for position, but quickly lost control and spun into the end of the start-finish straight barrier and slewed into the wall after that at over 200 miles per hour, which you can imagine is it's a pretty gruesome crash. His initial impact was 34 gram forces, and his second impact was 51 gram forces, and destroyed his entire wheelbase foundation, axles, and sent thousands upon thousands of debris flying all over the track.
Upon this, Bortoletto was sent to the medic for an immediate evac and was checked upon, and he was actually cleared to race in the Grand Prix, but he could not participate in qualifying. He had to sit it out for his health and safety.
And yeah, that did set him back for the race, but performed pretty well altogether. And so there were some big surprises on Hamilton's Q2 exit, and also with Pierre Gasly with a promising performance for Alpine, which was kind of out of the blue. And then Verstappen's Q1 exit to a pit lane start.
I'm going to get in position to throw out a conspiracy theory.
Okay.
He is committing an intentional self-sabotage in order to absolutely dominate Brazil, as he has been poised to do ever since the beginning of his F1 career. 2016, Exhibit A. 2021, Exhibit B with an asterisk over it. Skip over 2022, we don't talk about that. He has I have my reasons. And obviously, 2023. I mean, he has, I don't even know, what would you describe it as?
I don't know. I feel like it's just Sao Paulo conditions. I feel like Sao Paulo is very it can just toss up in the air, and the rains, the wind. I think conditions are really, really pulling Verstappen forward or back, successful, unsuccessful in this situation. So, and I blame it on the conditions, because we've seen Verstappen being a very consistent type of performer. So this being out of so left field, one can only assume conditions, I feel.
Indeed. And it's very shocking to me, not only as a big Verstappen fan, but given the fact that it was adverse conditions that helped him be successful in many races in the past. So I would agree with you that this is really out of left field for the fellow. So,
and going into the Sao Paulo Grand Prix, what an absolute disaster for the Ferrari team and the home hero Bortoletto, even sadder than that.
Yes.
So we saw Bortoletto come into contact with, say it with me, Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll on the opening lap and crashed into the wall and out of the race at turn 11. Lance Stroll, you were doing so good this season. I feel like you really were having the face turn of the century when it comes to Nepo babies and racing. What happened?
I have no idea, but I think that, I don't know, I was kind of rooting for Lance Stroll in this one because there was promise of rain, and as soon as a drop of rain touches his car, he turns into Senna.
Yeah, he turns into God! Like, oh my gosh. Well, I think some of Senna's kind of, spiritual energy rubbed more so over on Antonelli. But we gotta, hold on, Sasha.
Yeah, let's not forget that after seconds after the safety car, Piastri decided to hang it down the inside of his first corner and punted Antonelli's left side pod, which, crashed into the curb and took Ferrari out of the race after sustaining front axle damage. Ferrari, why? Why would you do this to us? This is not you. We'll just say that.
Yeah, and with Hamilton placing in the back of the grid, and then Leclerc having that crash, Ferrari is another devastating weekend for Ferrari, and I just keep feeling bad for these guys. And so the FIA did not take this incident lightly at all and awarded Piastri a 10-second time penalty for causing this car collision.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Ash, considering Piastri's penalty and his lack of form recently, and Verstappen being on the come up, but just a little bit too little too late. I know you don't like Norris, but we gotta... He's probably going to win the championship. I mean,
I definitely think so. And this was a great race for Norris altogether. But going back into Ferrari, let's finish that up. So Hamilton actually got stuck at the back of the race, as I said before, due to the struggling medium tire, which is kind of, I don't know, I feel like that's kind of consistent for Ferrari at this point. They're always struggling on tires, I feel. And sometimes I feel like there was one one-off race where they gave Charles Leclerc soft tires. I feel like it was 2 or 3 races ago. And he performed quite well, but there's always a tire issue with Ferrari, unfortunately, which led him to retire from the race at the halfway point.
I mean, I feel like when it comes to setup issues with the car, we've seen Hamilton complain about this since the beginning of the era back in 2022.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We saw him complain with the heavily porpoising W13 Mercedes back in 2022, which pretty much bothered him up until the halfway point of the season. We saw it not be as much of an issue with the W14, considering they got rid of the porpoising and put more time into long-term upgrades and investments, which is probably why he semi-dominated the season. Yeah. And then, obviously, with the W15, do not talk about that. The current Ferrari, do not talk about that.
Nope. Yeah, this is one, I don't know, Ferrari season that we're going to have to skip over for the history books.
It's a sad story for them, to be sure.
And I feel that Hamilton has reiterated multiple times that you have to make these improvements to the Ferrari car, and at some point he's just given up. But if I was part of the Ferrari team, I would listen to seasoned drivers, well-experienced drivers like Hamilton and Verstappen. If they say something's wrong with the car, I'm going to look into it. I would change the car or, fix what's wrong with it or whatever. But yes, I think that's been a point of controversy. And I think many people would agree with me on that if you have experience with the car, you should probably listen to what the drivers have to say.
Of course. And speaking of drivers in the mid-game, we didn't really see anybody gain position other than Hülkenberg and Behrman, who have been on a pretty consistent form throughout the second half of the season. Obviously, Hülkenberg's great form catapulted after a podium at the British Grand Prix. We saw Behrman score 4 races in a row. Singapore, United States, Mexico, and the recent one in Brazil. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Sauber and Haas try to battle it out with their counterparts at Racing Bulls and Aston Martin to see if they can get up into the midfield, because it has been so close between, I believe it was 6th and 9th place. So it's probably one of the closest midfield battles that we've seen, where each of these midfield teams has scored a very sufficient amount of points.
I do agree. And I kind of enjoy these midfield battles more than the current championship right now, because it's kind of predictable at this point. But with Behrman being kind of a late bloomer, I think I'm really excited for him to place into the points. I've always said there's a lot of promise for this season's rookies, and we've seen that with Hadjar. We've definitely seen it with Antonelli. I feel like Behrman's definitely on the come up. Bortoletto's been not that consistent this season, but I'm excited to see what these rookies have to give.
And then, hot take, Colapinto getting re-signed is an absolute joke.
I forgot about Colapinto.
It's a joke.
It is a joke. I do believe that. I think last year Colapinto had, I don't really know, he had that kind of fire, that kind of energy last season. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's because Flavio Briatore thinks he is probably what Colapinto would call him in an Argentinian slang, this machismo guy who thinks he can get away with everything. And he, is back on his comeuppance after the Crashgate scandal in Singapore 2008. Buddy, you are a rusty tin can Sprite bottle. You do not hold any value in the sport. You are arguably worse than Mohammed Ben Salah.
Wow. I do think that Colapinto thinks very highly of himself and is not a good driver, or I don't know, at least this season. And I fear he definitely has the highest potential of all 20 drivers to be replaced next season.
Yeah, but apart from all that controversy
Yes.
and stuff going on at Alpine, Satya, do you want to tell us what Verstappen managed to pull off, the likes of which, if I had glasses right now, I would chuck them against the wall?
Yeah, so about Verstappen. So, I mean, he could very well pull it off. I mean, McLaren crashes and burns, but I mean, Verstappen, given what I've said earlier about him being an absolute victorious machine that you do not want to mess with when it comes to overcoming adversity, he could very well pull this off since McLaren has obviously crashed and burned, but he would have to make up a ton of ground by winning every remaining race. And given where he's at right now, he had better get started.
Yeah, and so he actually pitted for the third time during this race, and he just had a well-deserved third place, which is, I think he was climbing from
He was climbing from the pit lane all the way up into second place at most points of the race.
Yes.
And then eventually when Norris pitted, he was actually in the lead, which I think it's the first time or one of the only few times where we've seen a driver who started in the pit lane lead a race.
Oh, absolutely.
And I feel like
that is F1 racing history right there.
Yeah, he actually did make F1 racing history when he tied the best result for a driver starting from the pit lane. He finished in third place, and he's still very well in contention for this title battle, but he would have to make up a ton of ground by winning pretty much every single race of the season, including a decent result, up to par result at the Qatar sprint, which is the last one.
Yes, that I do agree with that. He has to place pretty high for all of those, and then McLaren also has to do kind of poorly for Verstappen to have this kind of result. But Lando, he is now leading the Drivers' Championship with a 24-point gap. And so that means that Piastri would have to win the next race and keep a consistent performance in the top 6 in order to win the title.
And of course, Lando would probably have to DNF at one of these events.
Yes, that is true in order to close that point gap. But
yes. Let's go ahead and talk about some very underappreciated drivers from this race. Let's go on a little bit more about Antonelli, but let's also go on about Gasly and Sainz. I mean, Satya, what's your take on this?
So, I mean, with Sainz, I don't really think I have much of a hot take, but I think they should just kind of keep doing what they're doing. And I mean, given that Lando Norris is the kind of guy who's taken Max's throne, so to speak, right? I would really just kind of give anything for... I don't hate Norris as much as the next person, but I mean, I would want to see, Sainz or... anyone else just kind of give him a run for his money, because I feel like these guys are kind of an afterthought after everything that's been going down with all the other crashes and Ferrari's absolutely deplorable performance. So I'm rooting for these guys just as much as Verstappen, as much as you may find it surprising.
I do want a Williams come up in the next couple seasons. But the reason why we want to talk about Pierre Gasly was because he's placed P10 in this race, and that is, I think, his best performance this season.
Actually, his best performance this season came from Britain when he scored P6, I believe it was.
Yeah.
But the thing about Alpine is that nobody expected them to be at the literal rear end of the field. They did not expect them to be the short end of the stick this season, considering the miracles that they've been able to pull off to get into the midfield, including the Ocon-Gasly double podium last year. And especially considering how this is another hot take of mine, they did pretty dang good in the first year of the turbo hybrid era.
I do agree with that. Absolutely. And if we just look back to last season, I think they pulled off an amazing stint in
Brazil. It was in Brazil. Literally this circuit last year.
I don't really remember what the positions were.
Okay, so I think it was Verstappen who started P17. He was knocked out in Q1. Had a flyer of a start, but nobody could really catch up to the likes of Esteban Ocon, who was leading the race after the first safety car when Russell and Norris made the decisions to pit. And then Ocon got a podium, P2. Gasly also got a podium in P3. It was Alpine's first double podium, I believe, since 2005?
I think that's correct.
When they were branded as Renault.
So actually, you said Max Verstappen started in P17. He won that he won the Brazil Grand Prix that year or last year.
He did.
With Ocon getting second and then Pierre Gasly getting third. And so that's what we're talking about. That's just the miracle that Alpine and Haas pulled off last year. But I think largely of the large fault of Alpine this season was taking Franco Colapinto. I think he's just raw. I think he's just not ready.
He needed... Listen, the half season he spent at Williams in 2024, that was a miracle.
I don't know if it was rookie luck.
It was like a once in a blue moon kind of occurrence where he was able to score points on his second race. Mm-hmm. And people really dogged Sargent unfairly after that kind of performance.
I do agree with that. Like, how can you blame Sargent for that kind of performance when it was kind of light years ahead of whatever Colapinto is doing right now? Yeah. But I do think, like, when you're placed into the Williams second seat, Williams don't have a terrible car. Like, I feel like I don't know if that's controversial or not. They don't have a terrible car. And Albon has really brought this team, like, years. Like, Albon has really pushed this team ahead and stayed consistent with the team, been a long-time driver, and is largely like a good pillar for the team. And that's why I feel that Colapinto last year and Carlos Sainz this year are doing so well.
Oh, yeah. Following his appendix surgery, I think he needs an L4 and L5 surgery on his back because of all the carrying that he's been doing, especially even though he only spent 1 year with Latifi, he was carrying him.
Oh, I do.
Yeah, Latifi was in the corner dining on his, little Nutella sandwiches. But that is going to do it for our special report on the São Paulo Grand Prix. Make sure you guys tune in with us next week where we will be talking about Michael Schumacher officially.
Yes.
So that is it for the Slipstream Racing Podcast. I'm Trey.
I'm Ash.
I'm Sachet.
And we will see you guys next time. Peace out.
Bye.